Well, it looks like the stimulus deal is going to happen despite the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court, the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and President Trump's diagnosis with the Wu flu. All of these things going against the stimulus package, it is still going to happen. So now some of you might be saying, wow, you were totally wrong. Well, not exactly, because before I said that there would be no stimulus, or at least that I thought there would be no stimulus, I thought there definitely would be. It was only the death of Ginsburg that changed that to me, because I thought it was pretty certain that, way back when, when all of this virus stuff started happening, I was predicting that we were going to have endless stimulus from here on out. When the first stimulus package got passed, I did not think that was going to be the end by any means, because it's not exactly like these Republicans are anti-debt or something like that. I mean, we run $1 trillion deficits every year. Trump has has run more debt than any other president. If you look on an annual basis. And so this whole narrative about how Republican senators are not going to pass a stimulus deal because they're budget hawks. Obviously, they're not budget hawks, or else they'd be cutting the military, they'd be cutting Medicare, they'd be cutting Social Security. They're not doing any of that. The bottom line is these folks want to get elected, they want to get reelected, they want to be able to say that they brought home the bacon, which is really what you do in Washington. You get this pork packed in to these bills to inject taxpayer money into your district, and then you come home and you say, oh, look at all this money I got for us. I got us a new civic center down at the fairgrounds. I got a new library. I got a new bridge on the overpass for the interstate. This is all me. You see, this is why you elected me. I bring home the bacon. And so, a stimulus package is a good way for these kinds of guys to ram all this stuff in. It's a justification to just spend money for no reason. So they can say, oh, I could take some money over here. We could use a new elementary school. We could use, a big hydroelectric dam. Now, the only thing worse in this case than not bringing home the bacon for your district or for your state, if you are a member of Congress or a member of the U.S. Senate, is that if there's a lot of talk about this in the media, if the Democrats come out and say, hey, we're going to try and pass this new stimulus thing, everybody's going to get $1,200 again, but instead of getting $1,200 once, you're going to get $1,200 a month forever, $12,000 a year. Basic minimum income. We're going to get it done because this economy's destroyed. People have to eat, and that's what we are going to do. And then the Republican Senate comes out and says, no, that's crazy. We can't spend that much. And then people see how much, debt the government's running as it is, and, how they're spending it on wars in Afghanistan and Yemen and whatnot. If you shoot this down as the Republican Senate, then you go back to your states and you try and campaign, how do you think people are going to receive you? Is that going to be a popular move? Are you going to get more votes because you shot this stuff down, or are you going to get less? Are people going to go, hey, I wanted my Pelosi bucks, I wanted my $1,200 check, and you took it away from me. It was mine. She was giving it to me. Grandma Pelosi, she said, I can have that money, and you, Grandpa McConnell, said no. No politician wants to deny anyone free stuff. And so if they're really given the opportunity, I think these guys are going to vote for it. Now, I still don't know with everything going on, because the Senate has been adjourned until October 19th, I think, which, again, this is McConnell's way of trying to make sure that there's only room for the Supreme Court nomination. Pelosi and Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, the man who famously, just made a couple of phone calls and put in a floor, in the middle of the Christmas Eve massacre of 2018, he was able to stop the declines in the stock market by going out there and saying, hey, we did it. I talked to all the banks, and, liquidity is not a problem. And at first, there was a big sell-off on Wall Street, and people thought, oh my God, Mnuchin, what have you done? But then, all of a sudden we put in a floor, and after that day, stock market, never got down there again, or at least it's certainly we're well above that level now. I can't remember exactly if it ever touched down at the Christmas Eve lows at any point. Actually, it would have in March of this year. It would have been gotten below there, but Mnuchin is a man who knows how to make stocks go up, and he's not going to let a silly little thing like the United States Senate stand in between him and that mission. He's been talking it up with Grandma Pelosi, and they've had a lot to talk about. And the more they talk, the more money. You see, when the two parties come together, you know that they're going to come to an agreement to spend lots of other people's money. Specifically, they're going to spend the Fed's money. And Mnuchin knows that Chairman Powell has given him a blank check. He says, here's your blank check, Secretary, now go spend it. And so Mnuchin is talking it over with Madam Pelosi, trying to find a way that all of them can buy everything that they've ever wanted. And if those two come to an agreement, which President Trump seems very supportive of, he wants there to be a stimulus bill. If that comes up, and the House and the White House both agree, but the Senate doesn't, that's not going to happen. You're not going to have Mitch McConnell and these other GOP senators, making some last stand like General Custer to prevent an increase in spending or what have you. But I still think that McConnell's doing what he can to try and prevent any sort of deal from being passed before the election. And, it still might not happen before the election. To me, it seems like all this stuff with the Supreme Court is going to have to move very quickly. And, you never want to count on a Supreme Court nomination going through, or Supreme Court confirmation going through smoothly. There's so much that can be caught up to slow these things down and to drag them out. So, to me, I would not bet on the Supreme Court nomination just going off without hitch and then them having plenty of time left over to pass some stimulus bill. But either way, no matter whether it happens just before or just after the election, this stimulus bill is coming. And the intention of Washington is to inject a lot of cash printed by the Fed into the U.S. economy. Essentially, they want to encourage and stimulate consumption of goods when we are in a period which has seen a steep drop-off in the production of goods. And if they really do take, let's say, $2 trillion and hand that out to every American without bloating all of their pork, which, this is really just sort of a pie-in-the-sky scenario because, of course, that $2 trillion is not going to be all in direct payments to Americans. But let's just say that it is. That would be equal to about, 10% of annual U.S. GDP. And that, of course, would be before the Depression. So if you add back in terms of spending, 10% of the old GDP when we're at this new lower level of production, which is, it's hard to say at this point what in percentage terms the economy has lost. But this would probably be enough to help some starving businesses get by a little longer. However, it wouldn't solve any structural problems. What people don't understand about an economic catastrophe like this is that it's not about just weathering the storm and then getting by. Things have been structurally broken. People have lost their jobs. We're not going to get them back. There are certain businesses that rely on the economic activity generated by other businesses which no longer exist. And, these ties cannot just simply be repaired by time. And so inevitably, once this stimulus passes, there will need to be another one, and another, and another. The reason for this being that nobody's willing to take the medicine. They're not willing to accept that we're going to have an economic downturn. They're trying to desperately stop it from happening, and all they're doing is fighting against the forces of nature. And they're, of course, doing it with money that's just being printed up out of thin air. to me, it's very easy to see how this would spiral into a a Venezuela type of situation, just because nothing positive can come out of the path that we're going down. Things aren't just going to suddenly start getting better. Things have to get worse, and if the government won't let things get worse, if there is this consensus in Washington, which I suspected the whole time. I said this as soon as back in probably in February or March that we were going to see an infinite number of dollars being spent by Washington trying to prop up this economy, and that it would be a bipartisan affair. Because nobody wants to go back home and campaign for re-election and say, hey, I'm the guy who didn't want to give you any money when you lost your job. But I'll keep following this because there's still a lot that has to go down. I mean, we're not down a good road, but we're not to the stage of things being apocalyptic yet. As far as the dollar's concerned, the dollar's not going to collapse tomorrow or anything like that. But what we are seeing out of Washington, the behavior that they are moving towards, could very well break the dollar. As of right now, the collapse of the dollar is not inevitable in any sense. The collapse of our economy is inevitable, and Washington and the Fed seem all too happy to sacrifice the dollar at the altar of the economy, but of course they will be doing so in vain. Because, don't think that inflation's not possible. We've seen from the Fed that inflation is very possible. The Fed has devalued the dollar. They just have only done it in very specific sectors. The Fed has devalued the dollar in terms of U.S. equities, in terms of bonds, in terms of housing. Go out and try and buy a house today. Your dollar's worth a lot less than it was 10 years ago. With the federal government joining in with the Fed to try to create inflation, they're finally going to be able to, if they, again, depending on how the bill is written, going to be able to create consumer price inflation, which that is what truly will doom the dollar. So, that's about all I have to say at this point. If you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So, I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.